You know what? I'm pissed off.
American people
We're getting screwed by the big banks.
Then this guy walks into my office and says,
there's some shady stuff going down. No one's paying attention.
the banks got greedy, and we can profit off of their stupidity.
You want to bet against the banks?
I think we're either high or having a stroke. Kind of brilliant.
Welcome to Editors on Editing. I'm Glenn Garland. Hank Corwin has edited such emotionally charged films as Natural Born Killers, U-Turn, Nixon, The New World, and The Tree of Life. Now he has lent his wonderful skills to the powerful film, The Big Short, for which he won the Eddie Award and is nominated for the Oscar. Hank, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it.
It's great being here.
I loved the movie. It was fantastic. I just was blown away by all the creativity and all the style that you guys threw in, but I was also really emotionally involved with the characters. Tell me a little bit about how you got involved with this particular project.
My agent called like weeks before saying that, you know, there might be something interesting coming up. She'd mentioned Adam's name. I took it with a grain of salt because, you know, the guy, he did Anchorman, which is a great movie. You know, they're great movies, but I usually don't do those kinds of films. They sent the script. It was a fantastic script. It's one of the best scripts I've ever read.
And he co-wrote it, right?
He co-wrote it, yeah. I was intrigued, to say the least. And we just got on like a house afire. And then I said, well, let me know after you speak, you know, after you speak to everyone. And I told him I'd love to do this. He said, you're hired, don't worry about it. So I mean, that's how I got it.
And what were some of the conversations you had? Because the style is very out of the box.
He had mentioned Michael Winterbottom's 24-Hour Party People. You know, he referenced back to some of the films I had cut. Actually, I think he talked a little about Natural Born Killers. And really what I got from him was just this feeling that I would be safe trying things. You know, the worst thing is when you work with a director and especially at the very beginning, the nascency of the relationship, and you show the director something and he hates it, and you know, you feel like you're going to get fired. And I never felt that with him. First of all, I looked at some of the dailies and they were terrifying because I know nothing about finance. As a director who comes from improv, he has a script, but he lets his actors go far afield.
Yeah, I've heard that about him.
He was very liberating for these guys. You know, and when you have classically trained actors like Christian Bale, I think it was probably really very liberating and scary for him too.
Sure.
I would get just hours and hours and hours of footage with all these different performances. And I had to sort of piece something together initially because it was so daunting. You know, first of all, it was like playing this crazy three-dimensional chess. It's like if you make, as an editor, if you make a decision early on, it may not have like pejorative effects until like five cuts later. It's like a bad chess move will ripple and you'll be in a checkmate situation.
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting about this film is sort of that it mixes drama and documentary-like subjects with pop culture programming, and it mixes them together in this beautiful stew.
First of all, I think it's really important when you have a movie like this that's so dense to emotionally and culturally contextualize it. You know, and that's where the stock footage came in really well. And if you see Britney Spears, or if you hear Ludacris in a Ludacris video and you intercut stuff, I mean, first of all, it sets the times, and it's fun to watch. Or when we meet the boys, when we meet Jamie and Charlie, they find Vennett's treatise on what's going to happen, and they're celebratory. And I found that Polyphonic Spree video. It was a Nirvana cover. What was it? Lithium. And it just articulated the joy they were feeling in a way that I could feel it. I mean, ultimately, as editors, we have to cut for ourselves.
It's interesting because I'm wondering, script-wise, what was there And you have animation with the cash register and the blocks of gold, and then you've got even Geller going as they're making money, and it was so fun.
Well, I mean, that was really the name of the game. I mean, I get a little hurt when people say I threw in the kitchen sink, but I did a little bit. It's like we had to make this film understandable. We had to make this film fun. I mean, the other task I had was differentiating the groupings. Bale is very different. The Bale Burry character is very different than the Correll Mark Baum character.
Absolutely.
You know, and so editorially, I chose to have different styles for each grouping. Towards the end, you know, they all end up on the same roller coaster. And the editorial styles, I had them all converge, you know. So the last act of the film becomes very somber and very simple, whereas you had the pyrotechnics up front. Initially, my big fear was that people wouldn't be able to tell who the players were and who, you know, which groupings they belonged to.
Well, Burry, the way that you introduced him was really effective, I felt, because you've got this stuff of him playing football as a kid and then him swimming as an adult, and he's got this glass eye, and you're intercutting this, and you automatically go, okay, this guy's a competitor.
Initially, that stuff was scripted sequentially. You know, he started playing as a kid, playing football, and we go to swimming, and ultimately we go into the office. And I'm fascinated by like origami, you know, and being able to fold scenes and emotions into themselves, because this film could have been very long and deadly. So I was just intrigued by being able to fold scenes into themselves and into each other, you know, and have it be sort of synergistic. So it almost becomes, as opposed to montage, it becomes like a collage. I don't know if I'm being...
Yeah, I mean, with Baum, he's talking to his wife, and you see the energy that he's got when he's on the street with his cell phone, and then you go to these haunting shots of what must have happened to his brother committing suicide. You really get into this guy who's conflicted of, like, he's in this supercharged world, but he's also a very emotional, sensitive man inside. And by juxtaposing those things, you really get a lot more layers to this character.
So much editing is, I find it very two-dimensional, you know, and it's, you know, it's there. I mean, they call it the invisible art, as you know, which I sort of take umbrage, you know, to even the term, because, you know, because it can be invisible. It doesn't have to be. If you have an actor, especially a guy who's reaching like Steve Carell, who's doing improv, he's reaching, and, you know, he's trying different things, and he doesn't succeed, and he keeps trying, and he keeps trying. You find these moments where he's frustrated. You find these moments where he's happy, just subtle things. And
they might not even be part of that part of the scene.
They aren't at all part of the scene. You know, but I find if I use them, I'm finding like a moment of the real Steve Carell, who is the real Mark Baum at the moment.
Interesting.
And so, you know, the cut does it isn't necessarily a perfect match cut, but I don't care.
Well, you were cutting for emotion. I know with Burry, there were a lot of jump cuts that you were doing when he was talking, and it didn't throw me out because I was emotionally connected to him. I think that the invisible part comes because we're afraid, like, oh, people are going to see it as a movie. But if people are emotionally invested, and now the audience is so savvy, having watched music videos and watched so many documentaries and watched so much, that you can get away with a lot of stuff.
I will never sacrifice like the emotional impact of a scene for a concept of a match cut or simplicity. You know, I think that's like film school crap that I don't think has much validity in and of itself.
Sure. One of the montages that I thought was fantastic was when Burry is studying all the mortgages. And one of the things that was really interesting is you started cutting to these lights, and what I started thinking is like brain synapses.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, it was like, oh, this guy's mind works so fast. And that's what I was getting, instead of just going, oh, he's looking at numbers, he realizes there's a problem.
You've actually thought it out. For me, the mandate was to make it so people feel, they understand there's something synaptic about it, you know, like the synapses in the brain, without necessarily understanding it, but sort of emotionally understanding what's going on. I mean, you've articulated it. You're the first person I've spoken to who's who seems to really understand what I did there and why I did that.
So even if people don't get it subconsciously, they understand.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, I did a bunch of movies with Oliver Stone. The end of Natural Born Killers, there's this whole music video I did to I think it was a Leonard Cohen track. And there's a train. I told him, man, the train for me represents death. And he said, Hank, just shut the fuck up. Just shut up. I don't want to hear it. Just do it. For me, I always have like a subtext, a shot. There's a reason why I love a shot, and it may be because it reminds me of something that happened when I was 13. And I don't have to articulate it. I find actually when I articulate it, I sound like a fool. But if I can get the flow of that emotion into that shot in a number of shots, then I've succeeded. I've created like an emotional context. Again, that's why some of the stock footage is so evocative, because it's the cultural stuff.
How did you go through all the stock footage? Was your assistant like going through mounds and mounds of stock footage?
You know, YouTube is a terrible thing, you know, because as you know, I mean, you can't get stuff. I knew what I wanted, you know, so I would be going and I'd just start finding things, and I'd have my assistant, I'd say, I want that, I want that, I want that, please get me that, do that, this. And then I'd say, okay, I want to feel sad. I want to feel ennui, like this existential boredom. Find me shots like that. And so they would find me shots, and I'd say, yes, I love that. I don't know about that.
Yeah, there was one sequence that was simple, but it was really evocative with stock footage, where you have these flashes to white and these people parting, and it's like the world is burning, and yet they're parting, and you've got this needle, like it's reached the end of a record, and the needle's shh, and it's just very intense.
I was so lucky that we had our composer, who was a young guy named Nick Bertel, who was working with me. I would show him dailies, and again, I'd say, I want to feel this. I want to feel sad here. And it might be when there was happiness. So you'd have that juxtaposition of imagery and sound. And he would just play stuff to dailies. There was a lot of good stuff. And Adam was very rigorous about making the film shorter. I fall in love quite easily.
Well, there's also a lot of characters to follow. I mean, it's not just one character's film.
The fact that we were able to get it down to 206 was a feat of editorial engineering. But it was partially due to the fact that Adam was so rigorous in not having any fat. You know, whereas I might have, to the detriment of the film, I might have had a little bit more.
You'd put definitions on the screen, and you'd sometimes put like little animated things when they're talking about the testicle issue.
Oh, the epididymis.
Like yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be. I thought it wasn't scripted. I thought it'd be fun. I had my assistant. I had an assistant who's she's a fantastic artist. Because the character in one of his improvs had mentioned an epididymis. And it was just, to me, for some reason, maybe it's because I'd been in the room for 16 hours, I found it hilarious. You know, so I went to Wikipedia, I found a drawing of an epididymis, and I asked her to animate it, and she did. I think she did a wonderful job.
And that was her animation
Yeah,
that
I
ended
believe
up
it
in the
was.
final.
Yeah.
You guys did fun stuff sometimes. I remember during this narration where Vennett's talking about, you know, you might not understand this stuff, you might feel stupid, and then you go to this raft shot
With a dog.
with a dog in sunglasses.
It was a stupid shot. I loved it.
It was great.
Yeah.
But those like little things are just, you know.
Well, you know, when you have something that's this deadly serious, and it could be this deadly boring, you know, you got to leave them laughing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it certainly leads you in. And well, I think we went to Margot Robbie right after that. I mean, Adam is just a stone genius.
One of my favorite little moments is when Geller and Shipley turn to camera and they go, "It actually didn't happen like this." It's the conceit of like, you're watching a scripted film. It's never going to be exactly the way it happened. You know, what is reality, but it feels real because it's capturing the essence.
No, I think so. I think, honestly, when they, because I think we've been slammed by a few people about this fourth wall thing, breaking the fourth wall.
Well, I was wondering, you know, if that was a concern of you guys.
Certainly not for me. And I think Adam, you know, he's above my pay grade. He might have sweated it in the beginning, but he never let on. And you know, I don't buy, the film theory. Most of it is bullshit. Seriously, it is. And I don't want to sound like I'm really down on people who cut well.
Mm-hmm.
But in a film of this complexity, I feel so strongly it's got to be entertaining.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I think you can get away with it too is because it's satirical in a way.
I mean, seriously, I feel like I'm financially inside of you or something.
Okay.
I'm jacked. I'm jacked to the tits!
Good.
It's a commentary on, you know, how crazy things got. And it got crazy.
Jamie talking about how when he's there in the bank, it didn't really happen this way. Yeah, first of all, it humanized him.
Yeah, you like him immediately when he does that.
Absolutely, but you are there in the room with him.
That's true. He's almost like bringing you to his side and say, "You're a friend of mine."
Absolutely, you go into his reality. And I find that fascinating.
I get it. I can feel you judging me. That's palpable.
Another sequence that I loved was when Burry goes to Goldman. And then afterwards, when they realize that they think he's a total idiot, you start playing the rap music and you start showing all these images of music videos and money.
It's almost like a cocaine high. And this is where I don't know if I should be saying this. I haven't done drugs in a million years. But it's like the way I sensed it when in high finance, when people were making these gigantic amounts of money, it was like a drug high.
Mm.
I wanted an audience to feel it.
And then you hard cut out of some of the music.
First of all, the music is really engaging. The popular cultural images are really engaging.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you stop it, when you stop the sound, when you stop the music, it brings you to a reality. Then you pick it up again. So it's manipulative.
And it keeps the audience engaged because they got to be focused. I mean, whenever you sort of crescendo some music and then cut it hard, it wakes people up. I remember my grandfather, who was a concert violinist, sometimes they would play, I forget what the name of this symphony was, but they would go do 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 do, and they'd keep on playing lower and lower, and then they go and then and people would like jump in their seats because you have to have those ebbs and flows to really get people focused.
No, I think you do. And you know, it's like, again, you can get into emotional rhythms as opposed to storytelling beats.
And then when they start losing money, there was a nice little juxtaposition that you guys did where Baum's losing money and Shipley and Geller are losing money, and you start cutting, you're intercutting, and they're like, no, 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 no way. And tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that goes along with what I told you, how they ended up on the same roller coaster in different cars, but they all got on the same path. And even,
so it sort of joins them together.
Absolutely, it's the beginning of that. And when they go to Vegas, well, for me, Vegas is so horrifying. That's why I put the music from The Phantom, which worked. It's actually pretty effective.
After Baum leaves Vegas and he comes home and he talks to his wife, instead of having a conversation where you actually have all the dialogue, we're just getting bits and pieces of dialogue, and it's very surreal the way that they're talking, and you really get the sense like he's like unloading this big weight, and by not hearing it, it almost felt more emotional, and it was able to be shorter because we didn't have to get the information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're actually talking about one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. You had Carell initially, who was so bombastic. He was so self-assured and so self-righteous. And he becomes fragmented. He's destroyed. It's almost a funereal track. And I kept cutting back to the outside because I love the mantra nature of it's almost like
Like an ohm? Almost?
yeah, absolutely. There's a ripple there, a ripple in time and a ripple in emotional space.
Mm.
Initially, we'd been trying to cut that scene, and it was, trying to put it together where he's speaking. It just didn't ring true. It was just really over the top, and and we were about to get rid of it, and I just didn't want to get rid of it. It's not that I didn't want to get rid of it so much as I didn't want to admit defeat. And if you see his lips moving and you don't hear anything, or if his lips are moving and you're hearing something that's obviously out of sync, you're showing a much bigger conversation, and you're showing like an emotional passage of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it felt like they could have been talking for hours.
Absolutely. Well, that was what
And
we
you
were
were
going
distilling
for.
it to a minute or something like that. And because of that, it felt like there was a much bigger conversation that had been had.
That scene is very near and dear to me, only because I love the orphans. I love the scenes that generally are the ugly ducklings, and that definitely was.
Well, what led to that scene, I thought, was a fantastic scene with the synthetic CDOs where
Yeah.
he's talking to the guy, and you guys started putting in laugh tracks,
It is a sitcom.
and you have these freeze frames on Steve, like he's almost like frozen in time, like, oh shit, this is bad. It was great.
Thank you. As the Wing Chao, the CDO salesman, was talking, it almost was becoming more hallucinogenic, and I was trying. That's why, like, I threw in the laugh tracks. I took the sounds and threw them out of sync with themselves, so they started phasing.
Mm.
And so it just really banged and became very noisy. And then I used that Guns N' Roses track, just because it felt great.
Mm-hmm.
A Sweet Child of Mine, and then just stopping all the action, just freezing, and moving in. I can't claim that I came up with that. I did a video for Mark Romanek it was a Beck video called Devil's Haircut years ago, where he turned me on to that technique, and he told me Truffaut came up with it, really.
Mm.
But I found it to be very effective.
Baum is on stage with the Bear Stearns guy.
Yeah.
And the way that you ended it was really effective, because as people start to leave, you pull out all the sound except for the music. And then you freeze frame on this one person, and you just feel like people's lives were just destroyed.
Absolutely. He was like the deer in the headlights. I think he was like an old investor, just an old guy. And anything you can do if you pull out sounds in a case like that, I mean, it almost brings you into that freeze frame. It makes you focus on that. It becomes a surreal moment.
Mm-hmm. You have that wonderful, almost like mythical, this is what happened, and all these people went to jail, and they fixed the economy, and I just love that little sequence that you guys put together. Was that in the script?
It was in the script.
Yes, we're gonna fix it.
That Neil Young track is amazing.
I remember my wife's like, I'm so angry.
I know.
She's like, I'm so angry. Well, you already knew this stuff. And she's like, yeah, but you forget, nobody did go to jail. And it's right back where it was.
Absolutely.
So what would you say were like your greatest challenges with this film?
I didn't have huge difficulties cutting this movie. I had a ball. And initially I thought I was going to get fired.
Because you were taking so many chances.
Yeah, it's like when Adam signed on for stuff, it's like, holy cow, and I think we cut it really quickly, I think.
Were you sending Adam cuts while he was shooting?
I'd been cutting for 3 weeks, and he came in, and I showed him the tranche scene.
No one is paying attention. And then that happens.
What is that?
That's America's housing market.
I showed him Mike Burry, initially with the swimming and the football. And to his credit, I mean, he said, he walked in, he looked at it, and he said, I'm going to leave you now. I'll be back in 2 weeks. just keep doing what you're doing. It was fantastic. I mean, when does a director do
Total
that?
trust. He didn't want to like get in your head, because sometimes if you do get notes too early, it really like affects you.
Yeah, this guy, Adam McKay, is seriously the real deal. He is. He's just an amazingly talented guy. I'd follow him to the gates of hell. This guy's great.
And we've talked a bit about some of them, but what are some of your favorite scenes?
I love the whole movie. I mean, I can honestly say that.
I loved it too, and
Thank
I
you.
was a big fan. Thank you so much for being here.
I really appreciate it.
How can the banks let this happen? It's fueled by stupidity.
But that's not stupidity, that's fraud.
Tell me the difference between stupid and illegal, and I'll have my wife's brother arrested.